Let's talk about your morning. For so many of us, the day doesn't really kick off until you've had that first cup, right? That warm, dark, amazing drink. It's way more than just a beverage, it's a ritual, something that connects billions of us. But the story of how it even got to your mug, well, that's an incredible tale of pure chance, a little bit of fear, and a whole lot of revolution.
I mean, think about it. What is that one thing that kickstarts the day for a huge chunk of the planet? It's that little moment that wakes up your brain, gives you a second to pause, and gets you ready for whatever's next. And the sheer scale of this daily habit is, well, it's pretty wild. That's not a typo. Over 2 billion cups of coffee are consumed every single day. That means at any given second, you can bet someone somewhere is taking a sip. It gives us that jolt of energy for sure, but it also gives us a moment to think, to talk, or just to be.
But here's the kicker. This massive global empire, this thing that's the second most traded commodity on Earth right after oil, it wasn't some grand invention. It didn't come from a lab or a boardroom. Nope, the whole thing started completely by accident, with a curious shepherd and his very, very hyper goats.
Okay, so for this first part, we're going to jump way back in time, more than 1,000 years ago. And to really get how huge this discovery was, you have to picture what the world was like before coffee existed.
And this really paints the picture, doesn't it? On the left, that's the world pre-coffee. Your day was basically ruled by sunlight, and for breakfast, often it was beer or wine, which, keeps you calm, but also makes your mind kind of foggy and slow. But then look at the right. Coffee comes along. Suddenly the mind is awake, it's alert, it's focused. It was a total game changer.
So the legend goes like this. There's a goat herd, Kaldi, and one day he notices his goats are going absolutely nuts, like literally dancing around after eating these weird red berries. So he tries them himself and feels this incredible rush. He takes them to a local monastery, but the head monk is totally freaked out, calls them the devil's work, and throws them into a fire. And right there, that was the best mistake in history, because this incredible aroma starts filling the monastery as the beans roasted. The monks pulled them out of the fire, crushed them up, added hot water, and that night, they were wide awake for all of their prayers. The first cup of coffee was born from a total accident.
Now, that first cup was a game changer for those monks, but that was just the start. The real journey, the one that completely reshaped society, began when coffee left the monastery and went public, turning from a prayer aid into a social revolution.
So first, the beans crossed the Red Sea into Yemen. And this is where things get really interesting. In the 1400s, Sufi monks there started cultivating it. They needed something to keep them awake through long nights of devotion, and they basically perfected the process of roasting and brewing. It was an art form.
Pretty soon, word got out. Traders and scholars started drinking it, and they called it kawa. In Arabic, that means the drink that gives strength. I mean, how perfect is that? For the first time, there was this popular drink that made your mind sharper, not duller.
And this is where the world really starts to change. In Mecca, these new little shops started opening where people could just hang out and drink kawa. These were the world's very first coffee houses, and they were revolutionary. Think about it, a public space where people could gather and have intelligent, sober conversations. People from every class came to talk, do business, argue about politics. In a way, the modern public sphere was born in these rooms.
But you know how it goes. Whenever something new and disruptive comes along, people in power tend to get nervous, and coffee was no different. Rulers and religious leaders saw this new drink and the clear-headed debates it sparked as a serious threat.
The backlash was real. In 1511, the governor of Mecca shut down the coffee houses because he was afraid they were breeding rebellion. Then, when coffee got to Europe, some church leaders called it the drink of the devil, mostly because of its Muslim roots. Even as late as 1675, King Charles II of England tried to ban coffee houses because he thought they were full of troublemakers plotting against him. The big turning point in Europe, though, came when the whole controversy landed on the Pope's desk. His advisors urged him to ban it, but Pope Clement VIII wanted to try it for himself first. So he does, and according to the story, he absolutely loved it. He famously declared it would be a sin to let only non-believers have it. And boom, with a papal blessing, coffee was officially okay for the Christian world. It had won. And once coffee got that green light, the world started changing, fast. The coffee house became this incredible engine for new ideas, new businesses, and entirely new ways of thinking. In Europe, they got this amazing nickname, penny universities, because for the price of a cup of coffee, just 1 penny, anyone, it didn't matter if you were rich or poor, could walk in and listen to the most brilliant minds of the age debate everything from science to politics. It was a radical idea, knowledge for everyone.
It is just incredible when you think about what came out of these places. The very first newspapers, they started as gossip and shipping news shared over a cup of coffee. Lloyd's of London, the giant insurance market, it started in a coffee house where merchants met. The London Stock Exchange? Yep, same deal. Philosophers like Voltaire planned the Enlightenment in Parisian cafes. These weren't just shops, they were incubators for our world.
And that's really what it comes down to. With coffee, mornings became sharp. That mental fog from the old way of life was just gone, replaced by clarity and focus. You could almost say that humanity, as a whole, finally woke up.
Okay, so how did we get from those smoky London coffee houses to the cafe on your corner? Well, this last part of the story is all about how coffee went from a closely guarded secret to a product that spans the entire globe.
For a long time, the Arab world held a tight monopoly on coffee plants. But in the 1600s, the Dutch managed to smuggle some live ones out to their colonies. And then there's this wild story of a French naval officer, Gabriel de Clou. He took a single, tiny coffee plant on a long voyage to the Caribbean, and even shared his personal water ration with it to keep it alive. Almost all the coffee in Latin America today traces its roots back to that one little plant. It's an incredible journey.
But we have to acknowledge something really important here. This explosive global growth came at a horrific price. The insane demand for coffee helped fuel the transatlantic slave trade. The massive plantations in Brazil and the Caribbean were built on the backs of millions of enslaved Africans, and later on the exploitation of poor farmers. It's a dark, brutal part of coffee's history that we can't ignore.
And that complicated history brings us to today. In the 20th century, you get the invention of the espresso machine and instant coffee, and suddenly it's more accessible than ever. It's become this amazing connector between more than 70 coffee-growing countries and the billions of us who drink it every single day.
So, the next time you pick up your cup of coffee, just take a second to think about that journey. It's a story that started with a curious shepherd, was perfected by monks, debated by kings, and spread across the world by smugglers and adventurers. In so many ways, the story of coffee is the story of all of us.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The world was completely changed because someone just happened to notice his goats were acting funny. It all started with simple curiosity. So the question is, what's the small, accidental thing happening today that might just change everything for us tomorrow?